Hello, good day everyone. Good morning students. Now we are now in module 6 and in our module 6 we have two lessons. So it is evaluating and making judgment about a range of text using a set of criteria. So first we will have the short story analysis and the second one is we will have a poetry analysis. So remember, in evaluating a short story or a poem or any kind of literature, we should read it carefully and comprehensively. And by doing so, we also need to master or to be familiar with the elements of a short story or a story. So again, let's have this as a review because we have discussed this, I think, in lesson 1 or in lesson 2. So what are the elements of a short story or a story? So first, we will have a setting. So when we say a setting, it refers to the place and time of the story. Okay, so when evaluating the setting, look for where the action takes place. In our book, we have there to build a fire. So the setting there is very important because it is what the story all about. So the story revolves in the setting. It happened in Yukon where the temperature there is 75 degrees below zero. Second element is we have the conflict. So in every story, there has to be a problem. So just what I have said before, if there's no conflict or if there's no problem, there's no story. Okay, so the main character has to be challenged in some way or the story will go nowhere. So there are 4 basic conflicts that the main character faces. So first, we have the man versus man, second, man versus nature, and the third is man versus himself, and lastly is man versus the society. So man versus man, this is a typical story where the bida versus contrabida. Man versus nature is we have the 2012 or we have the San Andreas, just like that. Okay, man versus himself, the alter ego or the Rodora X where the main character battles with him or herself. Man versus society, for example, she or he doesn't want to do that but because of the society is against it, he or she will resolve to that method. Okay, so that is man versus society. Next is we have the character. So character is the development of characters in the story. So we have 2 primary characters. We have the protagonist and antagonist. So when I say protagonist, is the main character of the story and it's not always heroic. Okay? He or she is the person with which the story is most concerned. So, sino pinag-uusapan? Then antagonist does not have to be a human being. So, pwedeng bagay or anything that is the kontrabida. If he is a person, he may be the villain. Okay? This character is not have the main character's best interest at heart. In some stories, nature is the antagonist. So, some characters in the story do not change. So, we have the characteristics of the characters. We have the flat and the round. So, the flat, okay, these are static. He or she does not experience a change of any kind. Okay, from the beginning of the story up to the end, there's no development. While the round, it changes, it grows. Beginning from the very start of the story up to the end, the characters grows. Okay, so next we have the plot. So plot, it is the arrangement of the events of the story. Okay, so the plot should have follow some logical sequence of events. So when I say logical sequence of events, pagkasunod, sunod. Okay, so there are 5 elements. We have the exposition, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, and the denouement. So in exposition, these are the initial events, introduction of characters, and beginning of the story. This is how you begin your story. You expose the characters, the setting, and the introductory of the story. While the rising action, this is where the conflict begins. And the climax is the highest point interest of the story. It is the turning point that aims towards the conclusion of the story. This is where the part of the story that you cannot breathe at all because it's enticing na gusto mo talaga, ano nangyari? Ang sunod yan. That is the feeling in climax. And the falling action, it is where the conflict or the complication is being resolved. And denouement, the last part, or others call it resolution, this is the final outcome of the story. And of course, every story has what? A controlling idea or insight, or what we call theme. Okay, this is what the author wants the readers to understand at the end of the story. So, or it is also called as author's thoughts or view of the subject. So, without the theme, the story is useless. Okay, because there's always be a purpose. Why would a writer write a story or a poem? It has a purpose. Okay. So next is we go to point of view. So point of view, it is how the story is told. It also determines who will be the narrator of the story. So marami to before. We have 5, I think. But here in your module, this first person, third person, limited omniscient, and I will add second person point of view. I say first person, one of the characters tells the story and interacts in the story as well. The third person is the author can narrate the story using a godlike position in which she can see in the minds of the characters. And limited omniscient is still in the third person. The narrator will know what the character knows or what the author tells the narrator. So first person, one of the characters is telling the story. The third person is there's a third person there that who is telling the story. Second person point of view, it is referring you, talking to you directly. Okay. So in our short story, at 3 a.m. by Carissa Joy Daculap. At 3 a.m. by Carissa Joy Daculap. With trembling hands and drowsy eyes, I was nearly dozing off to sleep, looking at the tickling clock. It is 2:30 in the morning, and here I am, staring at my blank paper, suffering from a writer's block. I should be writing a story, but being creative is not my forte. I have a deep sigh and started walking towards my bed. I tried to sleep, but to my surprise, it seems like Hypnos doesn't want to cradle me. So I got up. I peek again at my clock, but it's already 3 a.m. Laura says that it is a devil's hour, but who cares? I do not believe in such nonsense. I went to the veranda and stared up in the sky. They beautifully glitter in there. I lost track of time as I look at them. It seems that the stars are flying towards me. Suddenly, a glittering light touches my face. It's a firefly. Out of curiosity, I poke it, and little by little, it magically turned into a handsome man. Unconsciously, I touched his face and stared at him. It feels like I knew this man for a very long time. His brown eyes are familiar, as if it pierces through me. He held me close to him and held my hand. He led me to the nearby sea. There is a boat on the side. We ride on it and he started rowing. He looked intently at me as if saying how he loves me just through his eyes. He stopped rowing when we are in the middle, but not that far from the shore. And the first time, he spoke, repeatedly saying the words, "I love you, forgive me, and I am sorry." Emotions stirred up inside me, but I did not know why. I do not know this man, but the emotions are familiar. He started crying, and it pains my heart, seeing him tearing apart. I do not know what to react. I am lost for words. I seemed glued to my seat. I started rowing again towards the other side of the shore. He stopped and said, "Wait for me here. I'll go back for you." I did not reply, but my heart knows that I will wait for him. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, too many hours had passed, but he did not return. And then the boat started sinking. I could not breathe. Where is he? He said he will come back. I need his help. I need him now. But he did not show up. Even his shadow and the darkness of cold water swallowed me. I opened up my eyes, desperately catching for my breath. Glad that it was just a dream. But the scenes in my sleep and his face were still etched on my mind. Truly, 3 a.m. is the devil's hour. It showed me the past I am escaping from him. Him who left me behind when he promised to come back for me. Where and when does the story take place? Do the setting influence the events in the story? Okay, so first it is in her room, right? Or yes, and after that, it moved to the sea or to the ocean. Okay, so is the setting influences? Yes, because when things changes, you can somehow foreshadow that there there will be what a different turn of events. Okay, so what is the mood of the story? Is it happy, sarcastic, angry, scared, sad, or etc.? Maybe it's sad. It's sad because as you can read in the story, what there's someone there. Speaker here is escaping. Okay, chasing away from him, the person there that he saw at 3 a.m. Okay, and what is the last there? That the boy promised that he will what? He will come back, but he was not able to return. Okay, who is talking in the story? Is it first person, second, or third person point of view? Okay, since it is using I, so it is a first person POV. Okay, so what is the conflict of the story? Man versus man versus himself, man versus society, or man versus nature? So it's man versus man. Okay, even though it's in her dream. Okay, because there's a person there. Okay, so after that you will do you will tell the story, you tell the exposition, the rising action, the climax, the fallen action, and the resolution. Here in analyzing. So when we say analyzing, you should know the theme of the story, who is the protagonist, the antagonist. And remember, when you watch something, you should always think, now what is the purpose of this? If it is just a crap, then why should you waste your time? For me personally, I do not watch horror movies unless I'm with my friends, or I want to shout, or I want to cry. Why? Because I cannot see the point of scaring yourself. I mean, why you should do that, right? I mean, I'm not fond of horror movies because I cannot understand the sense or the point of watching those movies. So you, as a student, you must also analyze what is the point of this story. For example, in reading Wattpad stories or reading web novels or whatever, anime, manga series, what is the point? Because if you're just entertaining yourself and you are not gaining from it, I mean the moral lessons, the realizations or reflections, I think you should stop doing that. Okay, because that is, everything should have a purpose. So next we have evaluating and making judgment about a range of text using sets of criteria in poetry analysis. So here in our poetry analysis, let's review the literary devices. We have the tone, the mood, the form, the imagery, the theme, and the structure. So again, a poem is different from a prose style short story because a poem, it has a structure, it has a rhyme scheme. Okay, so before we go on to our poem there, so let's review some literary terms that we should, or we are going to use later. Okay, so in our figure of speech, so basic, we have simile. So when we say simile, it is a comparison between things using like or as. For example, she is like a turtle, meaning you are telling that she's so slow, like a turtle. So that is a comparison, you using like and as. While a metaphor, this is a what? A comparison between non-human and human, or this is a direct comparison. So I usually thought that as that way. It is a direct comparison. For example, earlier you said she is like a turtle, but now if you're going to use a metaphor, you will say directly that she is a turtle. Maybe you lost your patience already because in every day that you are with her, she's very mabagal, and pagudmod ka pa sabi mo, alam mo, paano kang turtle, ganyan. But eventually, na-imberna ka na, you will say that you're a turtle, right? Ayan. So, it's a direct comparison. Okay. Or other example is, dun sa friend mo, parang nababalitaan mo na yung best friend mo ay girlfriend ng jowa mo. Sabi mo, parang nakakainis yung mga ano na parang ahas din. And so when nahuli mo sila akto, nagde-date sila, sabi, alam mo friend, ahas ka. Parang hindi ka na magpatumpik-tumpik, dinaan mo na siya agad. Kinompare mo agad siya sa ahas directly. So that is simile and metaphor. Okay, what else? We have the personification. So when we say personification, this is giving the human-like characters to things or anything. For example, you say the cloud smiles, the trees waves. Yeah. So that is what using human-like characteristics to an object. So that is personification. So next we have the hyperbole or the hyperbole. So this is an exaggeration to make a point. So ino-OA mo siya because you wanted to emphasize a point. For example, niyaya kang maglakad and sabi mo, ay hindi ako pwede because I have labahan. So you will say, I have gabundok na labahan para ma-visualize ng iyong mga friends na grabe yung labahan mo, parang kasing laki ng bundok. Pero of course, there's no such thing as kasing laki ng bundok na labahan. So you're just exaggerating it just to make a point. So that is hyperbole. Okay, so alliteration. So there are poetic sounds in literature. So we have the alliteration, the assonance, and the consonants. So when we say alliteration, this is a repetition of consonant sounds at the beginning of two things or more words. So consonant sound at the beginning are initial. For example, we say bat, bake, back. So what is the initial consonants there, sounds there that being used? So it is the b sound. So this back, bake. So there's a repetition of consonant sounds there. So that is alliteration. So what else? We have the rhyme. So when we say rhyme, we have the end rhyme. Because ito yung dulo yung tugma. In Filipino is a tugma. For example, basa, baba. So at the last line of your poem. So that is what we call the end rhyme. So in English, we have, for example, wing, spring. Okay, at the last line. So that is the end rhyme. Okay. So onomatopoeia, this has a very difficult word to spell, but I like this one. The word that is being used is based upon the sound of the word. For example, bang. The word bang is coined from its sound, which is bang. Of course, kapag nagbaril ka ng ganon, ang maririnig mo tunog is bang. That's why the word bang evolved. For example, toko. Bakit natin tinawag na toko? Because when the gecko sounds, yung toko, pag tumunog siya, toko, toko. So, we call it toko. Okay, so onomatopoeia, it is the words being derived from its sound. Okay. So, yung may halo siyang tunog. That is onomatopoeia. Next, we have the imagery. So, imagery is a vivid description of things seen, heard, smelled, touched, or tasted. So, it's a vivid description. And imagery requires also na you as a person, you have been experienced this before. Because kahit anong sabi kong maganda, kung hindi mo initindihan yung salitang maganda, yung magigets. Pag sinabi kong dilaw yun, kung hindi mo alam ang sabing dilaw, you will not imagine it. For example, I will say, utot ng pantot. Okay. So, you as a person, nakamoy ka ng utot ng pantot, you will really, as if you're smelling it, na parang dumadaan ka sa barong-barong or saan lugar na pagdaan mo talaga, bamoy pantot. Okay? But, if you haven't smelled pantot before, you cannot imagine it, or you cannot imagine the smell at all. Okay. When I say, hilaw na mangga, ayan, hilaw na mangga na sinausaw sa asin na pinisaan ng sili. Ayan. So, automatically your tongue or your mouth will water because you have experienced this before. So that is imagery. So, it's a vivid description of things seen, heard, smelled, touched, or tasted. Ayan. So, those are some literary terms okay, that we are going to use, or dapat you should know in basic, those are basic knowledge in understanding a poetry, because you couldn't understand a poetry if you do not know those devices. Okay, so here in our, what are the pointers there? So techniques in poetry analysis. Okay, so first we have to what? We have to take note what the poem's about. Okay, so work out the subject of a poem or find out what is the poem all about. Okay, so identify the poem, whether it is written in a first person point of view or a second person point of view or the third person. So remember, when I say first person, it should use I. Okay, second person, you, third person, he or she. So there's an indirect there. Okay, next is number 2, identify identify the purpose, theme, or message of the poem. What the author is saying in the poem, why he wrote the poem, and or what ideas they are using the poem. Okay, include your responses or reader's response towards the message of the poem, like a message or opinion on something. Remember that the poem consists of more than one purpose, theme, or message. So again, the purpose, the theme, or the message, pare-pareho lang naman yung word na yun. So, what is the purpose? Okay, again, just like what I was saying earlier, that in everything, there's a purpose. Okay? Next, discover the emotions, moods, or feelings employed in the poem. So, a poem contains different emotions or feelings that you need to look for. So, identify the poem's mood or the atmosphere injected by the author. Is it gloomy, happy, melancholy, and etc.? And consider also how the author apply various techniques to show these emotions in the poem he wrote. So the writer is repeating the words to convey some emotions or emotional feelings, because if you know what is the feeling of the poem, you will get the main idea of the poem. Okay. So next is identify the technique used in a poem. So what is form, the structure, the poetic devices being used, or the imagery. Okay, so what is the form? This is where the rhyme falls. Is it the rhyme scheme ba A, B, A, B, or A, A, B, or the end rhyme? Okay, so structure is the order of ideas in the poem as well as changes mood or tone. The poetic devices or the literary devices, we have the metaphor or the figure of speech. Okay, simile, personification, alliteration, consonants, yan, and imagery. Okay. Next is include your thoughts and feelings about the poem. So that is the last. When you are analyzing a poem, what is your interpretation? What do you feel when you read it? So you include that there, okay? So share whether you like or dislike the poem you have read and how it makes you feel. Okay, as a reader, take note how the message of the poem gives impact to you. So what is the impact of the poem to you? Include how well the author in emphasizing the message of the poem. In analyzing, avoid to use first-person point of view, but rather use third person. And think another ways to strategize of how the poem could be interpreted. Entitled Eerie by Carissa Joy Daculap. Okay, so let's see the poem. Let's analyze this poem. So sabi niya, can you... Eerie by Carissa Joy P. Daculap. Can you hear them? The weep of despair, sobs howling in the air. Screams can be heard, voices asking for help. Hot red flames is eating the vastness. Earth is dying and turning to ashes. Majestic Greenland is now in gray and black. Is there still hope, or the world will lose its luck? Tears are dried, the trees have died. People feel pain, but animals are in pain. Lives are lost. Yes, it's a big loss. Nature is in chaos. Are there choices to choose? That's the title, Eerie. So, okay, let's analyze it. So, in the poem there, the author is touching the reader's sense of hearing in the first stanza. Can you hear them? Okay, the signals that we need to pay attention to what she wants to say to us with regards to our nature. The poem was delivered to a second point of view by using you. So the point of view there is you. Okay, also stated in the first line of the first stanza, which means the poem is told in the voice of the onlooker or the observer. The mood of the poem is gloomy and miserable as reflected in the first stanza, the weep of despair. In the second line in the first stanza. Can you hear them? The weep of despair. Aside from that, it also mentioned in the second stanza the word hot that turns the earth to ashes and plants to gray and black. We can feel that the author has observed in her surroundings, for it shows a very traumatic feeling where we really need to pay attention to. In terms of the technique used by the authors to the poem, okay, she used what? The end rhyme. So we have despair, air. Okay, so the weep of despair, sobs howling in the air. Vastness, ashes. Okay, in the second stanza, hot red flames is eating the vastness. Earth is dying and turning to ashes. Okay, lose and choose. Okay, lose and choose. Lost and choose. We have lives are lost, yet it's a big loss. Nature is in chaos, are there choices to choose. Okay, and we have the black and luck. Majestic green is now in gray and black. Is there still hope, or the world will lose its luck? Okay, so the rhyming pattern there is not consistent, but some in the parts of the poem there is a rhyme scheme there. There's an and rhyme, meaning he wanted to point to emphasize those points. Okay, because if you have a rhyme, there's a sing-song pattern, or it can stay or inculcate in the mind easier if there's a the rhyme in your poem. So there's a change happening in the third line of stanza that shows changes from splendor to dreariness. Line, okay. So our earth has a majestic green land, and now it becomes gray and black. In addition, here is a comparison in the line that stated people feel pain, but animals are in pain. That signifies that even though we feel the agony brought by nature, but our nature itself feels the pain more than what we do. Okay, so what is the point of the author? The author wanted to tell the reader that every one of us should realize if our world has its hope in restoring its magnificent beauty, but this task rests on us. She also wanted to emphasize to us that we need to take good care of our Mother Earth, Mother Nature, which is our home, but it is our will whether we choose our nature to be in chaos or save our nature by rehabilitating it. Okay, so again, it gives a great realization of what our nature is facing now. So, still, we should love what God has created because He made us a steward to take care of it and not to destroy it. So, what do you think? Is it easy? Okay, so in understanding a poem, you really have depth understanding of it. You have to read it many times in order for you to absorb the meaning of the poem, because not all poem can be understood easily. Okay, but here in this poem, it can be understood easily because the image that is being used, the description is very clear and vivid, that you could imagine what is the speaker is referring to. Okay, so in your next activity there in what's more, the cycle of life, you are going to analyze it. Okay, so you must you must read it many times before you will understand it.
A solitary hiker called The Man sets out on a sojourn with only a wolf dog as a companion to a base camp which is far. The story takes place in the Klondike region of the Yukon Territory in Canada, where temperature falls to 75 Fahrenheit below zero. He leaves early in the morning and expects to reach the camp to meet the boys by 6:30 in the evening. Despite warnings from an old-timer from Sulphur Creek about the weather, he leaves for the camp. The dog follows him even though all its instincts tell it to do otherwise. He builds a fire when he stops for lunch, and the dog too enjoys the warmth. A little while after resuming his walk, the man accidentally falls into a concealed spring. He gets soaked up to his shins. His hands and feet go numb, and he is reminded of the words of the old-timer from Sulphur Creek. He removes his mittens and unties his moccasins, albeit with great difficulty. He gathers wood to build a fire around some pine trees. He takes twigs directly from the tree and ends up shaking the tree, causing the snow on the boughs to fall down and extinguish his nearly steady fire. He tries again, but the matchbox falls from his hands and 70 matchsticks fall into the snow. His hands and feet are so numb that he gathers the twigs and matches using the heels of his hands. He lights all 70 at once and tries to light the fire, but ends up extinguishing it. A crazy idea crosses his mind. He is reminded of a story of a man who killed a bull and crawled inside the carcass for warmth. He decides to kill the dog in the hope that he can warm his hands. "Come here, boy. Come to me. I said, come here!" He starts to panic and decides to run to the base camp. He doesn't have the endurance, so he stumbles several times and falls twice. After the second fall, he realizes the inevitability of death. He stops fighting and decides to face death with dignity. In his last moments, he remembers the words of the wise old-timer. "Yes, you were right, old horse. You were right." He imagines that the boys will come looking and take his dead body away. He falls into a slumber and slips into his death. All this while the dog looks at him quizzically. It has never seen anyone remain so still in such weather. It waits for a while, hoping for a fire. When it realizes that the man has been still for too long, it approaches him and figures out that he is dead. It immediately runs back to a base camp it knows, where there are other food providers and fire providers.
Just remember that I know it's kind of hard, but again, in evaluating or analyzing our short story and poetry, we have to read it many times. We have to know the elements of the short story. We have to know what makes a poem, what are the elements also, or the devices that encloses a poetry or a poem. So with that, I hope that could be a big help to us. And one thing that I could advise is just read it over and over before answering, so that when you answer, you will have a clear understanding of what you are doing. So that's all, I think. Good luck and God bless, children.